A marriage built on a decade of trust can be shattered by a single lie. For Elara Vance, that lie wasn't a whispered confession in the dead of night or a lipstick stain on a collar. It was a 5-star, meticulously planned business trip to Singapore. Or so she thought. Her husband, tech millionaire Julian Vance, was the man who had everything, and the man she thought she knew completely. The truth accidentally unearthed by their 5-year-old son's forgotten stuffed giraffe was far more luxurious, far more devastating, and would unravel a web of deceit that went far beyond simple infidelity. This is the story of how a perfect life became the perfect lie, and how one woman took back her power, one piece of evidence at a time. The Vance residence in San Francisco's Pacific Heights was less a house and more a statement. A 4-story monolith of glass steel and reclaimed Monterey cypress, it commanded a panoramic view of the Golden Gate Bridge, a view that cost more than the GDP of a small island nation. Inside the aesthetic was minimalist luxury. Everything was intentional, from the Joan Mitchell painting that dominated the living room to the custom-made Fazioli grand piano that no one ever played. It was a life curated to perfection, and Elara Vance was its chief curator. She had once been a rising star in the art world, a curator with a sharp eye and an even sharper intuition. But that was a decade ago. Then came Julian Vance, a force of nature with a dazzling smile and a vision for a tech startup that he promised would change the world. He'd swept her off her feet, and she'd willingly traded gallery openings and auction houses for charity galas and parent-teacher conferences. She didn't regret it. Not really. Their life was beautiful, and their 5-year-old son Leo was the sun in her universe. On this particular Tuesday morning, the San Francisco fog was a thick grey blanket over the bay. Julian was packing. His suitcase, a sleek carbon fiber Rimowa, was open on their king-sized bed. He moved with an efficient grace, folding bespoke suits and crisp shirts. "Are you sure you can't push the trip back even by a day?" Elara asked, leaning against the doorframe of their enormous walk-in closet. She was holding a small, well-loved stuffed giraffe with one button eye. "Leo's school is having the Father's Day breakfast on Friday." Julian paused, his handsome face softening with a familiar, practiced regret. "I know, Ellie. I'm so sorry. If I could, I would. This Singapore deal. It's the final negotiation for the Axiom project. It's a game changer for the company. Billions on the line." He walked over and kissed her forehead, his scent a comforting mix of expensive cologne and ambition. "I'll be back Sunday night. I promise we'll do our own Father's Day celebration. Whatever Leo wants." Elara's heart did a familiar little dip of disappointment, but she pushed it down. This was Julian. He was building an empire for them. His work was complex and demanding. "Okay, just be safe." Always, he said, his smile unwavering. Leo ran into the room, a whirlwind of energy. "Daddy, is Gigi going with you?" He pointed the giraffe, whose name was Gigi, at the suitcase. Julian chuckled, ruffling Leo's hair. "No, buddy. Gigi needs to stay here and protect you and Mummy. Daddy has to go do boring work stuff. But Gigi will be lonely for you." Leo insisted, his lower lip trembling. It was the kind of emotional logic that only a 5-year-old could deploy, and it was devastatingly effective. "I'll call him every night, just like I call you." "How about that?" Julian said, expertly diffusing the situation. The next hour was a blur of last-minute packing, rushed kisses and promises to call. The black town car pulled up, the driver loaded the luggage, and Julian was gone. Elara and Leo stood at the vast window, waving until the car disappeared into the fog. The house, for all its square footage, suddenly felt cavernous and empty. That evening, as she was tucking Leo into bed, he held up the stuffed giraffe. "Mummy, you forgot to pack, Gigi." His eyes were wide with accusation. "Daddy will be so sad now." "Oh, honey, Daddy will be okay. He has our picture with him." "It's not the same." Leo mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "Gigi gives the best hugs." Elara's heart ached. It was a silly thing, a child's toy. But in the quiet of the big house, it felt significant. Julian was under immense pressure. He'd seemed more stressed than usual lately, his smiles not quite reaching his eyes. Maybe a small, silly reminder of home was exactly what he needed. It was a foolish, sentimental idea, but it took root. She could overnight it to his hotel in Singapore. It would be a sweet surprise, a little piece of his son's love waiting for him in a sterile hotel room halfway across the world. She found the itinerary he'd left on his desk, printed on crisp company letterhead. Hotel Marina Bay Sands, Singapore. Check-in. Wednesday, September the 17th. Check-out Sunday, September the 21st. Below it was a secondary address for the company's temporary office suite where he'd be holding the meetings. Perfect. The next morning, Elara carefully wrapped Gigi the giraffe in tissue paper and placed him in a sturdy box. She wrote a small note. "For the best hugger we know, we miss you already. Love, Elara and Leo." It was a simple, loving gesture, an act of wifely devotion from a woman living a perfect life. She had no idea that this simple box holding a child's toy was a Pandora's box, and she was about to mail it directly into the heart of a lie, so profound it would not just break her heart, but shatter her entire reality. Elara chose a high-end international courier service in the financial district, the kind that promised museum-quality handling and guaranteed next morning delivery anywhere in the world. She wanted to make sure Gigi arrived safely. The clerk, a young man named Ben, with an impeccably trimmed beard and an earnest expression, treated the package with solemn importance. "Okay, Mrs. Vance," he said, tapping at his computer. "We are sending one stuffed giraffe to Mr. Julian Vance at the Marina Bay Sands in Singapore. Priority 1, international. He'll have it before his morning coffee." "That's perfect. Thank you." Elara smiled, feeling a small thrill of satisfaction. It was a good thing she was doing. Ben's fingers froze over the keyboard. He frowned, his brow furrowing. That's odd. Is there a problem?" "Just a small flag in our system," he said, not looking at her. "Our logistics network cross-references recipient names with hotel manifests for major chains, just to minimize delivery errors. It looks like the name Julian Vance isn't on the guest list at the Marina Bay Sands for this week." Elara's smile faltered. "Oh, that's strange. He must have booked it through a corporate account. Maybe it's under his company's name, Innovate Dynamics." Ben typed again. "Let me check. Nope, nothing under that name either. Sometimes reservations are last minute, though. Let me try the secondary address you provided the office suite." He typed in the address from Julian's itinerary. A red error message flashed on his screen. "That's not a valid address, ma'am. The postal code doesn't match the street for that district in Singapore." A cold prickle of unease traced its way down Elara's spine. It was probably just a typo. Julian had been rushed. He must have scribbled it down wrong, she said, forcing a light laugh. Men and details, right? Ben offered a sympathetic, if unconvinced, smile. Happens all the time. Is there any other information you have? A confirmation number, perhaps? No, he just left the printout. The unease was growing, blooming into a quiet, insistent hum in her chest. This was Julian. Meticulous, detail-oriented Julian. He didn't make mistakes like this. His entire empire was built on precision. Well, Ben said, clearly wanting to be helpful. We do have a premium service for our top-tier clients. I can run a multi-system search. If he has any travel booked under his name or his corporate credit cards through our affiliate partners, it might pop up. It helps us locate traveling executives all the time. Yes, please. That would be wonderful, Elara said, her voice a little too tight. Ben's fingers flew across the keyboard. Elara watched the screen, her heart starting to pound, a slow, heavy rhythm against her ribs. Seconds stretched into a minute. The hum of the office printers seemed deafening. Ah, here we go, Ben said, his face relaxing. Found him. It's a corporate booking through Amex Platinum Travel. Looks like the original itinerary was just an old template he printed by mistake. Relief washed over Elara so intensely it made her feel weak. Of course, a simple logical explanation. She felt foolish for her momentary panic. Oh, thank goodness. So you have the right hotel now, I do, Ben said, nodding. He read from the screen. Julian Vance. Check-in yesterday, September 16th. Check-out Sunday, September the 21st. Great. So you can send Gigi on his way. Absolutely, Ben said, finalizing the shipping label. He peeled it off and affixed it to the box. Just one moment. He turned the box to face her for final confirmation. And that's when Elara saw it. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The air rushed out of her lungs. Printed in crisp black letters on the stark white label was the destination. It wasn't a name she was expecting. It wasn't a city or a street or a postal code. It was a paradise. Recipient Julian Vance, Co. The Muraka Suite. Conrad Maldives, Rangali Island. Maldives, the Maldives, not Singapore. The name of the location was so absurd, so diametrically opposed to a high-stakes business negotiation in a bustling financial hub, that for a moment Elara's brain simply refused to process it. The Maldives was for honeymoons. It was for white sand beaches and overwater bungalows with private infinity pools. It was the place they had talked about going for their 10th anniversary next year. There must be a mistake, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her throat was dry, her hands suddenly clammy. That can't be right. Ben looked up, his professional cheerfulness wavering as he saw her pale face. It's what's in the Amex travel system, Mrs. Vance. A direct booking. Paid in full. The Muraka Suite. Wow. That's the exclusive underwater residence, isn't it? I saw it on a travel show. It's incredibly expensive. He stopped, realizing he was rambling. Is everything all right? Elara stared at the box. At Gigi, the giraffe, smiling his one button-eyed smile from inside his cardboard prison. He was supposed to be a comfort. Now he was a harbinger. Her mind raced, trying to build a bridge between two impossible points. Singapore, the Maldives, a boardroom, an underwater suite, the Axiom Project, a romantic getaway. The pieces didn't fit. They were from two different puzzles, two different lives. Unless they weren't. A new detail from Ben's screen surfaced in her memory, sharp and cold as a shard of glass. He had found the booking. He had confirmed the name and the dates. But there was something else he hadn't mentioned. When she'd asked him to search for Julian's company, he'd found nothing. But when he searched Julian's name, the booking had appeared. A corporate booking, he'd said. "Ben," she said, her voice trembling slightly, but with a new sharp edge of command. "The reservation. How many guests was it for?" He hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I'm not really supposed to." "Please," she cut him off, her gaze locking onto his. "It's important." He sighed and glanced at his screen. He looked back at her, his eyes full of pity. "The reservation is for 2 guests, Mrs. Vance." Elara drove home in a daze. The familiar winding roads of Pacific Heights felt alien, the opulent houses like elaborate tombs. She parked the car in the garage, but didn't move to get out. She just sat there, the courier's receipt for the cancelled shipment crumpled in her fist, the words Conrad Maldives burned into her retinas. 2 guests. The phrase echoed in the silent car. It was a drumbeat of betrayal. Her mind, trained to find patterns and connections in art and history, began to work with a terrifying clarity, sifting through memories, looking for the discordant brushstroke in the masterpiece of her marriage. Julian's recent late nights at the office dismissed as work on the Axiom Project. The new password-protected folder on their shared home server he'd called Project Ancillary. His sudden interest in scuba diving, which she'd found odd for a man who claimed to hate the ocean. Back inside the house, the silence was a physical weight. Leo was at preschool. She was alone with the truth, or at least the horrifying shape of it. She walked into Julian's home office, a space as meticulously organized as the man himself. She sat in his expensive leather chair and stared at his dual monitor setup. She had always respected his privacy, their trust so absolute she'd never felt the need to pry. That trust was now a smoking ruin. Her first instinct was to check their shared credit card accounts. She logged into the Amex portal. The recent charges were all there. The flight he'd told her about, a first-class ticket on Singapore Airlines SFO to Cayenne. It had been booked 2 months ago. But as she scrolled down, she saw another charge made on the same day for an almost identical amount. Another first-class ticket. SFO to MLE. Male, the capital of the Maldives, and next to it, a second ticket on the same flight, booked at the same time. Her breath hitched. He had booked 2 sets of flights, one a digital decoy for her to see, the other the real one. It was premeditated. It was cold. Who was the second ticket for her mind immediately went to his office. She knew the key players at Innovate Dynamics. There was his COO, a portly man in his 50s. His head of engineering, a woman who had just had a baby. None of them fit. The betrayal felt intimate, personal. It had to be someone he knew well, someone he wanted to spend 5 nights with in an underwater suite. Then she remembered Project Ancillary. She navigated to the shared server. The folder was locked. She tried all their usual passwords. Their anniversary, Leo's birthday. The name of the restaurant where they'd had their first date. Nothing. A cold fury began to replace the shock. He had built a firewall in the heart of their digital life. She stood up and began to search his physical desk. Tucked away in the back of a drawer beneath a stack of old tax returns was a small, leather-bound moleskin notebook. Julian was a digital man. He never used paper. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. The first few pages were notes on the Axiom project, filled with technical jargon she didn't understand. But then the handwriting changed. It was still Julian's, but looser, more personal. It was a list, not of business tasks, but of preferences. Sienna. No shellfish. Loves peonies, specifically white ones. Prefers champagne Veuve Clicquot over Prosecco. Loves the scent of sandalwood. Size 6. Valentino rock studs. Sienna. The name hit her like a physical blow. Sienna Croft, a junior marketing associate at Julian's company. Elara had met her once, maybe twice, at the annual holiday party. She was young, barely 25, with sharp, intelligent eyes and the kind of ambition that radiated off her in waves. Julian had called her his protégé, the brightest star in the company. He'd praised her innovative ideas, her tireless work ethic. Elara had thought nothing of it, even feeling a pang of pride for her husband's mentorship. Now that memory was curdled poisoned. The mentorship was a lie, a cover story. With a name, the digital world opened up. Elara went to Instagram. Sienna Croft's profile was private, but her profile picture was public. It was a simple headshot, Sienna smiling professionally at the camera. But Elara's curator's eye caught the details. The photo was taken outdoors. The light was golden, casting a warm glow. In the reflection of her sunglasses, Elara could just make out a distorted shape. A man holding a phone, his arm outstretched. The watch on his wrist was unmistakable. It was Julian's Patek Philippe, the one Elara had bought him for their 5th anniversary. She felt a wave of nausea. He was not just cheating on her. He was building a new life, a new narrative with this woman. The peonies, the champagne, the perfume. These were the details of a courtship. He was wooing her. Elara's mind was a maelstrom of pain and anger, but beneath it, something else was stirring. The part of her that had been dormant for a decade. The analytical mind of the curator, the woman who could spot a forgery by the faintest inconsistency in the canvas weave. Julian had created a forgery of their life, and she was going to expose it. She needed more than just a gut feeling and a reflected watch. She needed proof, hard, undeniable proof, that would stand up not just in her own mind, but in a court of law. The lie wasn't just about infidelity anymore. The flights, the underwater suite, the expensive gifts he was planning, this cost a fortune. Where was the money coming from? She went back to the Amex account, this time looking at his corporate card statements, which he'd always kept separate. She'd never had a reason to look before. As she scrolled through months of expenses, a pattern emerged. There were dozens of charges to high-end restaurants she'd never been to. Charges at luxury boutiques like Chanel and Cartier, and a recurring monthly payment listed under consulting fees to an LLC she didn't recognize. The LLC was called SC Creative Solutions. SC, Sienna Croft. Elara's blood ran cold. He wasn't just spending their money on his affair. He was funneling corporate funds to his mistress, disguising it as a business expense. This wasn't just a betrayal of their marriage. It was fraud. It was a criminal act. The scale of the deception was breathtaking. Julian hadn't just lied about a business trip. He had constructed an entirely separate financial reality to fund his affair. The perfect husband, the brilliant CEO it was, all a magnificent, elaborate fraud. And Elara, the curator of his perfect life, had been his greatest masterpiece of deception. She leaned back in the chair, the leather cool against her skin. The tears that had been threatening to fall were gone, replaced by a glacial calm. The heartbroken wife had vanished. In her place sat a woman who had just discovered the crime of her life. The game had changed. This was no longer just about a broken heart. This was about justice, and she was going to be the one to deliver it. The next morning, Elara did not call the Maldives. She did not scream or cry or throw a single object. Instead, she made 2 phone calls. The first was to her parents in Napa Valley, telling them she needed to send Leo for an impromptu grandparents' week. She fabricated a story about a minor plumbing disaster in the house that needed urgent disruptive repairs. Her voice was steady, convincing. They were delighted and promised to drive down that afternoon. The second call was to a name she had dredged up from her pre-Julian life. Anya Sharma. Anya had been 2 years ahead of her at Stanford Law before becoming one of San Francisco's most feared and most effective divorce attorneys. They had known each other casually through a mutual friend. Anya's reputation was that of a surgical shark, precise, relentless, and leaving nothing to chance. Her specialty was dismantling the empires of wealthy, powerful men who thought they were untouchable. She secured an appointment for that afternoon, citing an urgent and confidential matter. Anya Sharma's office was the antithesis of the opulent lairs of her clientele. It was a discreet, minimalist space in a downtown high-rise, decorated with severe abstract art. Anya herself was just as formidable a petite woman in a sharply tailored suit, with eyes that seemed to see right through you. Elara sat across from her, a sleek leather portfolio on her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. In a calm, methodical voice, she laid out the events of the past 48 hours. The forgotten giraffe, the shipping clerk, the Maldives, the 2 tickets, the moleskin notebook, Sienna Croft, the Instagram reflection, and finally the corporate credit card statements and the Shell LLC. She had printed everything, organized it into a clear, chronological narrative. When she finished, Anya leaned back in her chair, a flicker of something that looked like professional admiration in her eyes. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her voice a low, measured hum. "Most people come into my office with tears and text messages. You've come in with the foundation of a federal wire fraud case." "He thinks he's smarter than everyone," Elara said, her voice devoid of emotion. "He's built his whole life on that assumption. I need to prove him wrong." "Oh, we'll do more than that," Anya replied, a faint, dangerous smile playing on her lips. "We're going to dismantle him. But to do that, we need to operate with absolute precision. No emotional outbursts, no panicked phone calls, no tipping our hand. As of this moment, you are still the loving, trusting wife who is eagerly awaiting her husband's return from Singapore." "Are we clear, Crystal?" Elara said. "Good. Your discovery of the financial malfeasance is our primary weapon. Infidelity is emotionally devastating, but in a no-fault state like California, it's financially irrelevant. Embezzlement, however, that gives us leverage that is, to put it mildly, astronomical. He has defrauded his company, his board, and his shareholders. If this becomes public, he won't just lose his marriage. He'll lose his company, his reputation, and possibly his freedom." The word freedom hung in the air. For a fleeting second, Elara pictured Julian in a prison jumpsuit and felt a sickening lurch in her stomach. This was the father of her child, but she pushed the feeling away. He had built this cage for himself. She was just finding the key. "What do you need me to do?" Elara asked. "We need more," Anya said, leaning forward. "We need a forensic accountant. I have the best in the city. He'll need access to every financial document you can find. We need to trace every dollar that went into SC Creative Solutions. We need to prove it was payment for no actual work rendered. We also need to secure your personal assets. He may try to move money or lock you out of accounts once he knows you're onto him." For the next 2 hours, they transformed Anya's office into a war room. Anya made calls bringing in a discreet forensic accountant named Martin Quinn and a private investigator. Elara, guided by Anya, logged into their shared accounts from a secure laptop, downloading years of statements, tax returns, and investment portfolios. She gave Martin the login credentials he needed to begin his digital deep dive. The plan they formulated was cold and strategic. Elara would continue to play the role of the dutiful wife. She would speak to Julian on the phone every day, feigning ignorance. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Anya's team would be building an unshakable case against him. They would uncover the full extent of his financial deception. The goal was not just to file for divorce, but to file at the moment of maximum impact, giving Julian no time to hide assets or craft a defense. Leaving Anya's office, Elara felt strangely calm. The grief and shock were still there, a cold, heavy stone in her chest, but they were now overlaid with a sense of purpose. She wasn't a victim being swept away by a current of deceit. She was a strategist, meticulously planning her countermove. That evening her phone rang. The caller ID showed Julian's name, with the small icon of a satellite phone connection. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she took a deep breath, picturing Anya's stern face. She answered, her voice a perfect imitation of wifely warmth. "Julian." "Hi, honey. How was the flight?" "Long." His voice crackled through the phone, sounding 1,000,000 miles away, which she thought with a bitter irony it was. "But Singapore is amazing. The view from the hotel is just unreal. You can see the whole marina." The lie was so bald, so effortless, it stole her breath. He was likely looking at a turquoise lagoon, not a city harbor. "Oh, I wish I could see it," she said, her voice catching just enough to sound convincingly wistful. "Leo misses you like crazy. He wanted me to send you his stuffed giraffe." There was a half-second of silence on the line, a tiny crackle of static that might have been panic. "Oh. Well, that's sweet of him. But the international shipping would be a nightmare, Ellie." "Don't worry about it." "I know." "That's what I figured," she said smoothly. "So are the negotiations going well?" "It's intense. Long days. We're making progress, but it's a grind," he said, the familiar cadence of his important business voice settling in. "I'm heading into a dinner with the investors now. I probably won't be able to talk for long." Another lie. A dinner for two, no doubt. With white peonies on the table and Veuve Clicquot chilling in a bucket. "Okay, honey. Work hard. We love you. Love you too, Ellie. Kiss Leo for me." The line went dead. Elara stood in the center of her silent, perfect living room, the Joan Mitchell painting mocking her with its chaotic, abstract honesty. He felt nothing. No guilt, no hesitation. He moved through his lies as easily as he moved through the world. She looked at her phone at the picture of him and Leo that was her wallpaper. The man in that photo, the loving father, the devoted husband, was a ghost, a fiction. The real Julian Vance was somewhere in the Indian Ocean, living a life she had paid for with her trust. and he had no idea that back in San Francisco, his wife was quietly, methodically preparing to burn his world to the ground. The days that followed were the strangest of Elara's life. She lived a dual existence. On the surface, she was the lonely millionaire's wife, managing the household, taking calls from the decorator about new drapes for the sunroom, and sending Julian cheerful photos of Leo playing at the park. But in the secret hours after the staff had gone home and the house was quiet, she descended into the digital rabbit hole of her husband's betrayal. With the guidance of Martin Quinn, the forensic accountant, she became an archaeologist of her own life, digging through layers of financial data. Martin was a quiet, unassuming man in his 60s who spoke of numbers with the passion she had once reserved for art. He taught her how to read the language of deceit written in wire transfers and expense reports. Powerful men like your husband often believe they are creating a separate world with their money, he explained during one of their encrypted video calls. But they're not. They're just creating a paper trail. Our job is to follow it. And they did. The trail led them from the SC Creative Solutions LLC to a down payment on a luxury condo in Miami's South Beach, purchased under the LLC's name 6 months ago. Sienna Croft was listed as the sole resident. He hadn't just bought her a home. He'd bought her a future. They found records of a private jewelry consultation at Giraffe, resulting in the purchase of a 3-carat canary diamond ring, an item coded on the corporate expense report as investor relations gift. There were leases for a Porsche Macan, payments for private flying lessons, and receipts from exclusive resorts in Napa and Aspen, all corresponding to weekends when Julian had claimed to be on company retreats. The affair wasn't a recent fling. It was a well-established parallel life. The depth of the planning was staggering. He had been lying to her for years, not just days. Every I love you, every shared dream for the future was now suspect, potentially another move in his long, elaborate game. The daily phone calls from the Maldives were a special kind of torture. They were exercises in her own self-control. She became an actress delivering the performance of a lifetime. The jet lag is finally catching up with me, he'd say, a manufactured weariness in his tone. In the background, she could faintly hear the gentle lapping of waves. You poor thing, she'd coo, picturing him lounging on a sun deck, a cocktail in hand. Make sure you're getting some rest. One evening he told her, the deal is looking good. I think we're going to close it tomorrow. It's going to be a huge celebration. Elara's mind flashed to the jewelry purchase. Was he planning to propose? Was that the deal he was closing? The thought was so vile, it made her physically sick, but she kept her voice light. That's wonderful, Julian. I'm so proud of you. We'll have our own celebration when you get home. You get home. Absolutely, he said, his voice warm and sincere. He was a masterful liar. During one call, she decided to test him. Armed with a detail from her research on the Marina Bay Sands Hotel, she asked, Did you get a chance to swim in that incredible rooftop infinity pool? I saw pictures of it online. It looks terrifying and amazing. There was that fractional pause again, the microsecond of cognitive dissonance, as his brain scrambled to reconcile his fabricated reality with her question. Ah, no, not yet. He recovered smoothly. Been in back-to-back meetings from dawn till dusk. I've barely seen the outside of a conference room. What a shame, she said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. All that way, and you can't even enjoy the view. Each lie was a small cut, but she didn't bleed. She collected them like specimens, filing them away as evidence. They were proof of his character, of his capacity for utter contempt for her and their life together. The private investigator, a former SFPD detective named Rick, provided the visual component to Martin's numbers. He was discreet and efficient. He ran a background check on Sienna Croft. She was clever and ambitious with a spotless record and had risen through the ranks at Innovate Dynamics at a speed that now seemed highly suspicious. More damningly, Rick's sources at SFO confirmed it. On the day of Julian's departure, airport surveillance footage showed him checking in for the flight to Malé. Standing right beside him, her head resting on his shoulder, was Sienna Croft. Rick sent Elara a still from the footage. Seeing them together, so comfortable and intimate in public, was different from seeing numbers on a spreadsheet. It was visceral. This was real. This was the woman who had been living in the shadows of her marriage, sleeping in her husband's arms, wearing jewelry he'd bought with stolen money. Elara stared at the grainy image at Sienna's triumphant smile and felt the last vestiges of her grief burn away, leaving behind something hard and cold and unbreakable. On Saturday, the day before Julian was due to fly back, Anya called an emergency meeting. Elara met her at the office. The forensic report from Martin was complete. "It's worse than we thought," Anya said, her expression grim. She slid a thick binder across the table. "He hasn't just been funding an affair. He created the SC Creative Solutions LLC as a vehicle for corporate embezzlement. He's been awarding it grossly inflated no-bid contracts for marketing consulting, then using the LLC to buy assets, the condo, the car, jewelry, all under a corporate shield. He's siphoned over $4 million in the last 2 years alone." Elara felt a dizzying sense of vertigo. $4 million. This is enough to trigger a full SEC investigation. Anya continued. "The board of directors will have to act. When this comes out, they will fire him and likely sue him to recover the funds. He will be radioactive in the tech world. No one will ever trust him again." The path forward was clear. They had everything they needed. The plan was to let Julian return home, let him walk back into his life of lies, completely unsuspecting. The annual Vance Foundation charity gala, the crown jewel of their social calendar, was in 3 days. It was Julian's pet project, an evening where he played the role of the benevolent philanthropist raising money for underprivileged children. "It's the perfect stage," Anya said, her eyes gleaming. "He will be at the height of his public power and prestige, surrounded by his board members, his investors, the city's elite. And that is where we will serve him." The idea was audacious, theatrical, and brutal. It was perfect. Julian loved a grand gesture. He was about to be on the receiving end of one. Elara left Anya's office and drove home. The city lights twinkled below her, a sea of indifferent stars. Tomorrow, her husband would come home. He would walk through the door bearing gifts from a city he had never visited, his face a mask of love and relief. He would hug her, and she would have to hug him back. She would have to smile and pretend that everything was perfect just for a little while longer. The thought filled her with a chilling resolve. The final act was about to begin. Julian's return was a master class in deception. He walked through the front door on Sunday evening looking artfully exhausted. His tie loosened a weary but triumphant smile on his face. He dropped his bags and enveloped Elara in a hug that felt like a performance. "God, I missed you," he murmured into her hair. His scent was the same, but to Elara it now smelled of salt water and lies. She stiffened for a moment before forcing her body to relax, to return the embrace. "We missed you too." she said, her voice a near-perfect imitation of relief. "How was everything? Did you close the deal?" "We did," he said, pulling back, his eyes shining with pride. "Axiom is a go. It's a new era for the company, Ellie. For us." He handed her a shopping bag from Hermes, a little something from the Changi airport, duty-free. She opened it to find a beautiful silk scarf, its pattern a vibrant explosion of color. A gift bought with a guilty conscience from an airport he never set foot in. She smiled, a brittle, fragile thing. "It's beautiful, Julian. Thank you." Leo came barreling down the stairs and launched himself into Julian's arms. Watching her husband lift their son, showering him with kisses, and telling him how much he'd missed his little man, was the most difficult part. The love Julian had for Leo, she believed, was real. It was the only authentic part of him left, and it made his betrayal of her, the mother of his child, that much more grotesque. He had brought Leo a gift as well, a highly detailed model of a Singapore Airlines A380. "So you can see the plane Daddy flew on," he said, winking. That evening, as they put Leo to bed, the charade continued. Julian regaled them with fabricated stories of his trip, the spiciness of the food, the humidity, a funny story about getting lost in the hotel's massive complex. Elara listened, nodding and smiling, a silent scream trapped in her chest. Every word was a testament to his audacity, to his profound disrespect for her intelligence. Later, as they were getting ready for bed in their own massive bedroom, he seemed to notice her quietness. "You okay, Ellie?" he asked, his voice laced with concern as he unbuttoned his shirt. "You seem a little distant." Her heart leaped into her throat. She had to hold her nerve. "Just tired," she said, turning away to busy herself at her vanity. "A long week with Leo on my own. And I just missed you." It was the right thing to say. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. She watched their reflection in the mirror. They looked like the perfect couple, a portrait of wealth and contentment. It was all a lie. "I'm home now," he whispered, kissing her neck. Her skin crawled, but she remained still. "Things will be crazy for a bit with the Axiom launch, but then things will calm down. I promise. I was thinking, for our anniversary next year, what do you think about the Maldives?" The audacity of it was breathtaking. He was testing the waters, perhaps even laying the groundwork, to one day take her to the place he had just shared with his mistress. A hot white rage flared in her chest, so intense it almost choked her. She needed to get away from him. She gently disentangled herself from his arms. "That sounds amazing," she said, her voice miraculously even. "I'm going to take a bath. I just need to unwind a little." She locked the bathroom door, turned on the water to mask any sound, and sank to the cold marble floor, pressing her forehead against the cool wood of the door. She didn't cry. She breathed, in and out. She focused on the image of Anya's face on the thick binder of evidence on the plan. This was the final stretch. He was arrogant, overconfident, and completely unaware that the ground beneath his feet was about to give way. The next 3 days were an exercise in supreme control. Elara oversaw the final preparations for the Vance Foundation Gala, an event she had always orchestrated with flawless precision. This year, her focus was sharper than ever. She confirmed the caterers, finalized the seating chart, and reviewed the presentation schedule with the event planner. She placed Julian's most important board members and investors at a single table front and center. She made sure the press credentials included reporters from the Wall Street Journal and the Chronicle's business section. Every detail was a chess piece being moved into its final position. The night of the gala, the house buzzed with preparation. Elara had her hair and makeup done by a professional team. When she was ready, she stood before the full-length mirror in her dressing room. She wore a stunning blood-red gown by Alexander McQueen. It was a warrior's dress, elegant, severe, and unforgettable. She looked at her reflection. The heartbroken, trusting woman from a week ago was gone. In her place was a stranger she was just getting to know, a woman of ice and fire, her purpose as sharp and clear as a diamond. Julian walked in already in his tuxedo. He stopped dead when he saw her. "Wow," he breathed. "Ellie, you look lethal." "Thank you," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "It's a big night. I wanted to look my best." He walked over and adjusted his bow tie in the mirror standing beside her. "We make a hell of a team, don't we?" he said, smiling at their reflection. "We certainly do." Elara replied, her voice as smooth as silk. He had no idea. He was looking at a team of one. He was a man admiring a photograph of a life that had already been torn to pieces. As they drove to the venue, the San Francisco City Hall, its dome lit up for the occasion, she felt a profound and chilling calm. She was not destroying her family. He had already done that. She was simply turning on the lights. The gala was the glittering apex of San Francisco society. The rotunda of City Hall was awash in champagne camera flashes and the low hum of influential conversation. Tech billionaires mingled with politicians, old-money philanthropists, and the city's cultural elite. At the center of it all was Julian Vance, a king in his court. He moved through the crowd with an easy charisma, shaking hands, clapping back his arm possessively around Elara's waist. Elara played her part to perfection. She smiled. She made small talk. She graciously accepted compliments on the event's flawless execution. But her eyes were constantly scanning her mind, a ticking clock. Anya Sharma was not in attendance, but her agents were. A discreetly dressed man near the entrance, a woman who looked like a journalist by the stage. They were waiting for her signal. The signal was to be given after Julian's keynote address, the emotional centerpiece of the evening. After a lavish dinner, the lights dimmed. A professionally produced video played on large screens, showcasing the foundation's work. Smiling children, grateful families, all made possible by the generosity of the Vance Foundation, and by extension, its visionary founder, Julian Vance. Then Julian took the stage to a thunderous applause. He stood at the podium, bathed in a warm spotlight, the picture of success and benevolence. "Thank you," he began, his voice resonating with practiced humility. "Looking out at all of you tonight, I'm not just reminded of success, but of responsibility. The responsibility to build something meaningful, something that lasts. For me, that foundation has always been family. My incredible wife, Elara." He paused, smiling at her. The crowd applauded, and she smiled back, a perfect, serene mask. "And my wonderful son, Leo. They are my why. They are the bedrock of everything I do." Elara felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach as he continued spewing platitudes about integrity, trust, and transparency. He spoke about the recent success of the Axiom project, hailing it as a testament to his team's hard work and unwavering ethics. He was building his own myth, polishing his own pedestal, completely unaware that she was about to kick it out from under him. He finished his speech to a standing ovation. As he walked off the stage, basking in the adoration of the crowd, Elara gave the signal a slight, almost imperceptible nod to the man at the entrance. Events began to unfold with the silent, deadly precision of Anya's plan. As Julian stepped off the dais, a man in a simple dark suit stepped forward, blocking his path. It was Anya's process server, Mr. Julian Vance, the man asked, his voice impassive. Julian, still high on the applause, nodded. Yes. The man handed him a thick legal envelope. You've been served. Julian's smile faltered. He looked down at the envelope, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. At that exact moment, a wave of synchronized vibrations went through the room. Elara watched as the members of Julian's board, all seated at the main table, looked down at their phones. Each one had just received a secure email from Anya Sharma's office. The subject line read, "Urgent forensic accounting report and evidence of embezzlement at Innovate Dynamics." The email contained a summary of Martin Quinn's findings and a link to a secure data room containing every piece of evidence they had gathered. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The buzz of conversation died down. People began to whisper, sensing the sudden dramatic change in temperature. Julian tore open the envelope. His face went from confused to shocked to ashen white as he scanned the first page of the divorce petition. His eyes shot up, searching the crowd, and found Elara. She was standing perfectly still, her expression unreadable. He started towards her, pushing through the confused onlookers. Elara. What is this? What the hell is going on? He hissed, his voice a low, furious tremor. She didn't answer. Instead, she watched as his COO, a man named Marcus Thorne, approached them. His face pale, his phone clutched in his hand. Julian Marcus said, his voice shaking with rage. I just got an email, an accountant's report. What is SC Creative Solutions? What is this $4 million? Julian's head snapped towards Marcus, then back to Elara. The trap had sprung. He was surrounded. The public adoration had vanished, replaced by a circle of shocked and accusing faces. His world was collapsing in on him in real time, right in the middle of his crowning achievement. He looked at Elara, his eyes pleading, desperate. The charismatic CEO was gone, replaced by a cornered, frightened man. He saw everything in her cold, steady gaze. She knew. About the Maldives, about Sienna, about the money. She knew it all. She finally moved, stepping closer to him, so only he could hear her. Her voice was not a shout, but a whisper as sharp and deadly as a shard of ice. The trip to Singapore is over, Julian. She held his gaze for one more second, letting the finality of her words sink in. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away. She didn't look back. She walked through the silent, parting crowd, her red dress a slash of defiance against the gilded room. She passed the flashing cameras of the bewildered press, her head held high, and walked out of the grand doors of City Hall and into the cool, clean night air. She had walked into the gala as Mrs. Elara Vance, the perfect wife of a tech millionaire. She walked out as Elara, a free woman who had just reclaimed her name, her future, and her truth. The war was not over, but the decisive battle had been won. And she had won it, not with tears or screams, but with cold, hard, undeniable facts. The perfect illusion had been shattered, and in its place, for the first time in a long time, was reality. Elara's story isn't just about the shocking discovery of a betrayal. It's a testament to the quiet, unyielding strength that can be found in the ashes of a life burned down by lies. It's a reminder that intuition is a powerful tool, and that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of coming to light. She transformed her pain into power, not by seeking revenge, but by demanding justice using the very intelligence and meticulousness her husband so gravely underestimated. Her journey from a gilded cage to a hard-won freedom is a powerful lesson in resilience. If Elara's journey from heartbreak to empowerment resonated with you, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that strength often comes from the deepest wounds. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another story of truth lies and the incredible power of the human spirit. What would you have done in Elara's position? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one.